From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now!
The sort of modus operandi behind our whole organisation is to get out suppressed information into the public, where the press and the public and our nation's politics can work on it to produce better outcomes.
WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange, the whistleblowing website, is coming under attack from all sides, from the United States and from governments around the world. The WikiLeaks website is down, and the State Department has blocked its employees from accessing the site at work and is warning all government employees not to read the cables even from home. Today, we'll host an exclusive debate on WikiLeaks between one of the most prominent transparency advocates, Stephen Aftergood. He's critical of WikiLeaks. He'll be debating Glenn Greenwald, a constitutional lawyer and legal blogger at Salon.com. And the FCC is being accused of abandoning net neutrality rules that would ensure a free and open Internet. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. More revelations continue to emerge from the State Department cables released by the online whistleblower WikiLeaks. The latest cables to be disclosed show the CIA spearheaded the State Department's program to spy on foreign diplomats. Although the orders were authorized by Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice and her successor, Hillary Clinton, the Guardian of London reports a CIA official drew up the instructions for who should be monitored and what information should be tracked. The targets of the U.S. spying included UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and other top UN officials. The cables also show Britain has allowed the U.S. to store banned cluster bombs on British soil. Britain signed the International Convention barring cluster munitions in December 2008. But 6 months later, a U.S. cable said Britain had agreed to keep silent about a deal allowing the U.S. to store cluster bombs until 2013. According to Amnesty International, the leaked cables also confirm reports of massive civilian casualties in a U.S. attack on Yemen a year ago. The cables have already disclosed the Yemeni government agreeing to falsely claim they were carrying out missile strikes that were actually coming from the U.S. military. Yemen's deputy prime minister is quoted mentioning the Abyan strike, in which dozens of local residents were killed, including 21 children. In June, Amnesty released photographs showing the remnants of U.S.-sourced bombs at the site of the attack. Other leaked documents show U.S. diplomats believe top Sri Lankan officials were involved in the mass killings of Tamil Tiger rebels in the closing months of the 25-year civil war last year. A cable from January says the Sri Lankan president, Mahinda Rajapaksa, and other top officials were likely responsible for many alleged killings of Tamil rebels. The disclosure comes as Rajapaksa was forced to cancel a public appearance in Britain Thursday following protests from a Tamil group.
These people are asking for justice. That's what we're asking. We want an independent international investigation into war crimes and crimes against humanity committed by President Rajapaksa and his government.
The State Department, meanwhile, has imposed an order barring employees from reading the leaked WikiLeaks cables. State Department staffers have been told not to read the cables because they were classified and subject to security clearances. The WikiLeaks website has been blocked at the State Department, and the employees have been told not even to access the WikiLeaks website from home. The State Department's WikiLeaks censorship has even extended to university students. An email to students at Columbia University School of International and Public Affairs reads, "The documents released during the past few months through WikiLeaks are still considered classified documents. The State Department recommends you do not post links to these documents nor make comments on social media sites such as Facebook or through Twitter. Engaging in these activities would call into question your ability to deal with confidential information, which is part of most positions with the federal government." The warning to the SIPA students read. A former attorney for WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange has revealed that the sex assault allegations against Assange in Sweden center around his allegedly not using a condom. James Catlin says Assange has been accused of not using a condom during consensual sex with two accusers. Catlin says Sweden's justice system is likely to become the laughingstock of the world if the case proceeds. An international arrest warrant was issued for Assange this week. We'll have more on WikiLeaks after headlines. The House has approved a measure to extend the Bush-era tax cuts for individuals with an annual income of $200,000 or less and married couples earning no more than $250,000 a year. All but 3 Republicans voted against the measure as part of a GOP effort to preserve the cuts for those making over $250,000 as well. The measure has virtually no chance of reaching President Obama's desk amidst Republican vows for a Senate filibuster. Ahead of the vote, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi criticized Republicans for demanding tax cuts for the wealthy while stalling benefits for the unemployed.
$700 billion in tax cuts to the top 2% in our country. And our Republican colleagues say we should do that and we should not pay for it. We should add that $700 billion to the deficit. But when it comes to unemployment insurance, and just the renewal we want to have costs $18 billion, $700 billion, $18 billion, they're saying that has to be paid for. You have to pay for unemployment insurance. We don't have to pay for tax cuts for the rich. Tax cuts for the rich do not create jobs.
Newly released documents show warrantless government spying is continuing with real-time tracking of Americans' everyday transactions. A government memo obtained by privacy activist Christopher Segoyan shows law enforcement agencies have been able to monitor targets by obtaining their credit cards, loyalty cards, and travel bookings without a court order. Agents can receive the so-called hot watch orders by writing up their own subpoena and getting a judge to rule that it can't be disclosed. The American Civil Liberties Union, meanwhile, has released hundreds of pages of government documents it says show the government continues to violate legal limits on domestic surveillance. The documents acknowledge breaches in collecting personal information, but don't specify how many people have been affected. Republican Senator John McCain has given new indications he plans to help block the repeal of the military's ban on gay men and lesbian service members known as Don't Ask, Don't Tell. On Thursday, McCain questioned this week's Pentagon study showing that a repeal would have little impact.
This is a complex and important issue that could have significant repercussions for our force, a force that is engaged in its 10th straight year of sustained combat, but a force that is performing exceptionally well. At this time, we should be inherently cautious about making any changes that would affect our military, and what changes we do make should be the product of careful and deliberate consideration. I'm not saying that this law should never change. I am simply saying that it may be premature to make such a change at this time and in this manner.
Democrats have called for a repeal vote before the end of the year. The chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Mike Mullen, said the military is ready for a repeal.
Convinced that repeal of the law governing Don't Ask, Don't Tell is the right thing to do. Back in February, when I testified to this sentiment, I also said that I believe the men and women of the armed forces could accommodate such a change, but I did not know it for a fact. Now I do. And so what was my personal opinion is now my professional opinion. Repeal of the law will not prove an unacceptable risk to military readiness.
In other news from Washington, the House has voted to censure Congressmember Charles Rangel of New York following his conviction on ethics violations related to his personal finances. Last month, a congressional panel convicted Rangel for acts including failing to report rental income, improperly leasing a rent-stabilized apartment, and receiving donations from people with business before Congress. Rangel's the first House member in nearly 3 decades to be censured. Speaking before the full chamber, Rangel maintained his innocence.
In my heart, I truly feel good. It's not all the commitments that I made to God in 1950. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I know in my heart that I'm not going to be judged by this Congress, but I'm going to be judged by my life, my activities, my contributions to society, And I just apologize for the awkward position that some of you that are in. But at the end of the day, as I started off saying, compared to where I've been, I haven't had a bad day since. Thank you.
New figures show 2010 is likely to rank as one of the 3 warmest years on record. The World Meteorological Organization says 17 countries saw all-time high temperatures this year. The last decade has also been the hottest since record-keeping began in 1850. The data was released at the ongoing UN climate talks in Cancun, Mexico. Protests continued Thursday against Japan's call for abandoning the Kyoto Protocol when it expires in 2012. Japan says it won't agree to extend emissions cuts under Kyoto unless the U.S. and China also sign on. Masako Konishi of the World Wildlife Fund urged Japan to preserve Kyoto.
Japan said at the beginning of the conference that Japan is not going to commit itself to, after post-2012, the Kyoto Protocol. So Japan is moving away from the Kyoto Protocol. And if Japan does that, then it upsets a lot of developing countries and really block the negotiation here at Cancun. So Japan needs to say at the Kyoto Protocol so that it can show the leadership that it's really, really serious about tackling the global climate change.
In another protest, North American Indigenous activists led a protest against Canada's tar sands, the world's biggest single industrial source of carbon emissions.
The tar sands are the fastest growing source of greenhouse gas emissions in Canada, and it's one of the biggest emitters of toxic contaminants in our traditional territories.
Tune in to Democracy Now!'s coverage all next week. We will be broadcasting from